I am so excited to be here today and to be a part of this amazing project of When Hearts Heal and to be a part of this online summit today. I just wanted to share a little bit about me. As you know, my name is Laura Truesdale, and for over 27 years, I've walked alongside individuals as a licensed social worker and addiction counselor, and now a master heart healing practitioner. My passion is helping people uncover and heal the wounds beneath mental health challenges, trauma, and addiction, the hidden patterns that keep us from striving for love and worth outside themselves. What lights me up is seeing someone remember who they really are, that they are worthy, whole, and already enough. My mission is simple. It's to help heal hearts so more people can live authentically, love deeply, and experience the freedom of being their truest self. I want to share a little bit about me and my story and the power that I have come to know from my experience of heart healing. I am the youngest of four. My oldest sibling was 10 years older, and the closest to me was 6 years. Unfortunately, as the baby of the family, I sometimes never felt seen or heard. I felt like the tag along. I was going to all of my siblings' events or projects, and I just was kind of like the little family mascot. I was there to support everybody. I learned very early on in my life that my achievements were what got me noticed and validated. And I honestly interpreted that for love. I learned to be agreeable, to do for others, and I developed a core belief that if I could make others happy, then I would get to be happy. The problem was that I never achieved having everybody happy at once. So then it could be my turn. I spent so much time doing for others, making sure I made others happy. So honestly, that I wouldn't lose them or their love. I did have a sense of fear of abandonment, of being rejected. And it wasn't until heart healing that I understood where those wounds came from. I worked hard to be seen as smart and capable. I, throughout my entire life, have done more, achieved more. And unfortunately, I never felt good enough, even with all of my accomplishments. At age 47, I finally took the time to heal and learn about myself and how the events and people in my life shaped me for the good and the not so good. Now, at 53, I can stand before you and say that I truly am a woman that I love. I'm confident, wildly passionate about who I am and my mission to love and heal. My journey of healing has led me to identify and break my own patterns, and I'm so passionate to help others do the same. As a result of my growth and insights, I can connect to those I work with and help them take their own personal journey to break free from those things that have kept them from living their most authentic lives and helping them learn and know that they are already enough. They were born that way. You were born that way. I truly want individuals to embody their worth and to live the lives that they desire. And I am truly able to say that I am living the life I desire now. As I grew as a therapist, my paradigm shifted from looking at one's problematic behaviors to looking at what's happened in that person's life that created the patterns that have led to the development of some of those unhealthy behaviors. As a younger therapist, I looked at helping people change behaviors like their substance use and didn't really connect or understand the underlying roots of addiction. I embraced the medical model, disease model of addiction, and it does have its place, but I'm now more focused on helping individuals understand addiction as a coping mechanism to navigate trauma and hidden relational wounds of the individual. As Gabor Mate has shared, trauma and addiction cause an individual to be disconnected from their true self. The addiction, whether to a substance or a behavior, has become a band-aid, trying to hold everything together, to survive, to manage, or just to cover up the pains of those wounds and the trauma. Most people know about addiction to alcohol, drugs, sex, or even gambling, but seldom do we look at acceptable behaviors that can be addictions themselves, such as perfectionism, social media, people pleasing, overachieving, and even personal self-development. I too overlooked them. I experienced them. And it wasn't until doing the heart healing work that I could see how I was addicted to approval, constantly seeking it through people pleasing and overachieving. The heart of addiction is so close to my own heart, as I've worked in the substance use disorder treatment field for most of my career. I've seen the toil and that addiction has on individuals, on families, and communities. First, I want to share the definition of addiction, a clinical definition, and then a simpler way to describe it. Addiction is a chronic, relapsing disorder marked by a compulsive use of a substance or a behavior, despite harmful consequences. It involves changes in our brain circuits related to reward, stress, and self-control, making it difficult to stop without support. They call addiction a biopsychosocial disease because it affects not only the biology, it affects the psychology, and it affects the social aspect of an individual. A simpler description of addiction is when something controls you instead of you controlling it. It's when a substance, habit, behavior becomes a way to cope with pain or stress. And even when it causes harm, it feels almost impossible to stop. Addiction is often kind of like a band-aid over a wound that never truly gets cleaned. We all recognize addiction as a term that refers to the abuse or even lifestyle dependency to substances like alcohol, drugs, whether it's prescribed or whether it's common like nicotine, and process addictions such as gambling and sex. Some behaviors are more acceptable and not typically regarded as detrimental, such as work, exercise, perfectionism, social media, overachievement, people pleasing, and even self-improvement. And I can say I relate to a lot of those. Whether addiction is what we commonly think of it as, or it is subtle behaviors, they are all a means to cope with negative emotions and unhealthy core beliefs. Through my work and my own experience, I have seen signs of how addiction can take the most seemingly benign forms in some cases, some seen as positive attributes, but in reality, they cover up something that has been causing individuals to focus on approval as their source of feeling loved, seen, validated, and accepted. At the core of all forms of addiction is the heart, which is the keeper of all the deepest wounds. These wounds create negative beliefs and perceptions about ourselves and the world around us and lead to really unhealthy behavior patterns. Trauma, adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs, abuse, neglect, significant loss, all dysregulate the nervous system and leave lasting emotional scars. And these wounds often stem from fractured relationships, whether with caregivers, partners, or significant others, leading to a lack of self-trust, not feeling good enough, a lack of self-worth, fear of rejections and abandonment, feeling unlovable, and a lack of emotional safety. The impact of these wounds permeates all aspects of the person's life and create life-altering circumstances and consequences. Individuals challenged by mental health and addiction feel disconnected from themselves, their loved ones, and often their sense of purpose or even their reason for living. As I mentioned in my chapter, Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the author of The Body Keeps the Score, emphasizes how trauma is stored in the brain, affecting the brain, physical health, and emotion regulation. The body truly does keep the score of all trauma. Unresolved trauma disrupts the nervous system, creates patterns of hypervigilance, emotional dysregulation, and chronic stress. And as a result, people engage in behaviors to try to navigate those challenges. Dr. van der Kolk has done extensive research into the impact of childhood trauma, and I would say relational wounds, have had on individuals. And he has identified how mental health issues develop as a result. Gabor Mate explored in his book, In the Realm of Hungry Ghosts, the roles of relational wounds in addiction and how feelings of unworthiness, abandonment, and emotional neglect drive individuals towards substances and behaviors to soothe unmet needs. Healing begins with creating safety, connection, and self-compassion. I've witnessed personally how heart healing unlocks the obstacles to treating people with complex histories and offers pathways to true comprehensive healing. Today, I wanted to focus on the approval addiction through the forms of people-pleasing and overachieving, as I see in my work how these two behaviors have similar impacts to the nervous system, emotional dysregulation, and chronic stress. We're going to dive into these two, looking at the origins and the cost as well. And also look at what life can look like without having to use those two things to get the needs for love, worth, and acceptance met. I'm so excited to see people joining. Hi, Lynn, Shelley, and Emma. It's good to see you here. So how many of you recognize, yes, yes, yes. We're going to talk about the aspect of the approval addiction through the lens of people-pleasing. What creates people-pleasing? Often people-pleasing comes from our family dynamics, what we see in our own families, expressed or even unexpressed expectations. Childhood messages for young children, they may be told not to be selfish, which gets translated into doing others before yourself, even to the exclusion of their own needs. And we might have societal messages as well, whether cultural or messages we see in our individual environments. People-pleasing is explored here as a form of addiction driven by a fear of rejection and a deep need for validation. Saying yes becomes a survival strategy. It's to avoid conflict and gain love. This leads to shaping oneself to fit others' expectations. Love becomes conditional and performative, which is ultimately unsustainable. Saying yes feels good at times because it makes one feel like they're being selfless and helping others. And this can lead to changes actually in the brain, and people can get a dopamine hit from always being the one to help. And for those of you who don't know, dopamine is a natural neurotransmitter in our brain that helps us feel good. But it often also, when we people please, it leads to a neglect of self, a neglect of one's own needs and feelings. And because of that can create chronic stress to do everything for everyone. I know a lot about that, saying yes to when I really didn't feel like it, saying yes to really when I wasn't comfortable, saying yes just to keep others from being upset. The key takeaway is that trying to make everyone happy is an impossible task that can erode one's true self. And when we erode our true self, we lose sight of what matters to us. We believe that our needs are not as important as the needs of others. Helping others while losing self can and often does create feelings of depression and anxiety. I wonder how many of you relate to people pleasing and even the potential negative consequences to yourself from the act of saying yes, even when you want to say no. Please feel free to let me know if you resonate with this. I know that this was a core part of me for so long, and it has been impactful to learn how to be in recovery from people pleasing. It's a process, it's a journey. It's not always a one and done. And I'm still in the process of recognizing when I have those tendencies. But I can tell you from a place of strength that I now listen to my true self. Um, and I really focus on what it is that I need in circumstances and not always what the other person needs. Because it might come in the way of what I need in that moment, or even may overextend me. So, next, I want to move in a little bit to the approval addiction of overachieving. And achievement itself doesn't sound like a bad thing, it isn't a bad thing, but overachieving to the point that it becomes the main drive of life can be. Where does it come from? For me, it came from modeling in my own life. I have an amazing 86-year-old father, excuse me, who has accomplished so much in his life. And ever since I was younger, I have just seen him excel and achieve so many amazing things. He served in the military and he retired after 30 years. He was in local and state government in my state. He achieved in his career of being a civil engineer. And so I witnessed my father work so hard, so very hard. And I truly felt these expectations, oftentimes unspoken, sometimes spoken, about achieving. And he set the bar so high, so very high. And I could not be more proud of him. But it was in some unwritten ways expected of us too, and unspoken that we were expected to follow in his footsteps and excel in the ways that he did. And truthfully, I did excel, but not necessarily in the ways in which he believed I needed to. Achieving feels so good, and it's important to recognize how it does feel to get praise and accolades, and that sometimes that can become intoxicating. It did for me. Every time I achieved something, I wanted to achieve something else and move forward. Achievement is not bad, but when it becomes someone's main drive, it can be an issue that interferes with all elements of someone's life. Overachievement can trigger excessive work. It can lead to neglecting one's needs, and it can interfere with relationships and lead to anxiety and depression as well. This one is truly has been a core challenge for me. I overworked, and I believe in some ways that led to a huge rift in my own marriage. And eventually my marriage ended in divorce. Not from just that, but it definitely played a role. And it often, I felt and struggled with anxiety and depression, always wanting to feel like I was doing enough, being enough. And I present this as another addiction or addictive behavior because it becomes where success is equated with self-worth. And success is more than validation, as Nancy said. And success does start to equal love. And I definitely felt the temporary high and then the crashes. The belief that doing more will finally make one enough creates this cycle. Temporary highs followed by crashes, much like running endlessly on a hamster wheel. That poor hamster never arrives at the finish line. He just keeps on the wheel. And honestly, I resonate with that little hamster because I have too just kept running and achieving and doing more and more. It's exhausting and it's an unfulfilling nature of overachieving. It highlights the need to break free from this pattern in order for us to find lasting fulfillment. As I wrote in my chapter, my own experience of overachievement left me doing and achieving, but never feeling it was enough. Even into my adult life, even into all of my achievements, it never felt good enough. I work with teens all the way through adults, and I wanted to share a little bit about how I see the impact of overachieving on specifically teens who are overachievers, who have this pursuit of perfection, needing to have a certain grade point average, and this triggering an increase in anxiety, stress, and depression. Sometimes these teens have high expectations that are placed on them by their family members, or it can be self expectations because of a desire to make the family proud. I resonate with that. My father obviously wanted me to do well, and I had a beautiful and have a beautiful mom who just wanted me to do my best. I was never told by my mom I had to get A's, but I was told by my dad for every A I got, he'd pay me money. And so it created this desire to make my dad proud. He never really paid me for the money, but it was just seeing him proud of me that really fed this desire for overachieving. When individuals and these teens come to me, they feel they aren't achieving to their highest potential. And for some, it does result in emotional breakdowns and even self-harm. And self-harm, they do it oftentimes because they aren't perfect. Self-harm can become their own self-punishment or a way to feel something different than their own internal disappointment in themselves. Anxiety and stress are at an all-time high, especially when someone is in the cycle of overachieving. Overachieving teens lead to overachieving adults that can often struggle to find balance in their lives, and it leads to sacrifices in health, relationships, sense of security, and safety. Unfortunately, a tragedy that is seen too often in the United States is suicide by students. Over the past few years, it hasn't been uncommon to hear of a suicide of a high school student or a college student who are known to excel only to succumb to pressure they have put on themselves. And they felt the only way out was to complete suicide. And it has this ripple impact on so many people. And unfortunately, in some of the cases, it's right before graduation, right before moving on to college, or right before moving on into the adult world. Overachievement gets us accolades, but then there is so much of a relentless push to do more that it triggers more depression, more anxiety, and more stress. And often the wounds that exist underneath overachieving aren't talked about and often are sometimes never noticed. So let's focus on the root wounds of the approval addictions, and honestly, of most addictions. And the first is the wound of not enoughness. It's the belief that I'm only valuable if I perform. if I achieve, or if I please others. It's rooted in early messages of conditional love, praise when you're good or compliant, and withdrawal or criticism when sometimes your authentic needs are expressed. It leads to overachieving, perfectionism, and a constant striving to prove one's worth. And the wound of abandonment or rejection. The fear here is if I don't make others happy, I'll be left, I'll be unloved, and maybe forgotten. Childhood experiences of neglect, inconsistent caregiving, or rejection, whether it's overt or subtle, create a nervous system wired to avoid disconnection at all cost. And it results in people-pleasing behaviors, sacrificing self to keep love secure. I've seen a wound of invisibility, and the experience is my needs and my voice don't matter. And it often comes from environments where a child was overlooked, silenced, or told their feelings were just too much, or that in some ways they're just not enough. And as adults, they learn to earn visibility through the approval, accomplishments, and even caretaking roles. And then I see a wound of shame in my clients. And the message is something's wrong with me. Shame binds with a person's identity, making approval seeking a way to temporarily silence the internal critic. When shame is the root, people often swing between overperforming for love and secretly feeling unworthy, no matter how much approval they actually get. And then the wound of distrust and betrayal. The belief is, if I show who I really am, I'll be hurt or betrayed. And it's caused by broken trust and early caregiving, or even in significant relationships throughout our life. This leads to a protective pattern of hiding one's true self and giving others what they want instead. There's a cycle, and these wounds create an inner emptiness. Approval becomes a temporary balm, a hit of validation that soothes for a moment, but never heals the wound underneath. Like any addiction, the relief is short-lived, and the cycle of striving begins again. Healing comes when we return to the heart and to the heart of the wound, restoring safety, unconditional love, and self-worth. So approval is no longer the source of identity, but simply a natural part of healthy relationships. I'm curious in the chat if any of you are relating to the experiences of these root wounds, and maybe even are considering how these wounds really do underlie our push for people pleasing and overachieving. So now I want for us to talk a little bit about the cost of approval addiction. There's burnout, health issues, chronic stress and anxiety, shallow connections, or relationship issues, potential uses of multiple substances or behaviors to manage emotions, and having nothing left to give of yourself and to yourself. There's an internal experience at the cost of approval addiction. There's a disconnection from self. They no longer know what they want, feel, believe, because they've spent so long prioritizing others' expectations. There's confusion and emptiness. They may describe feeling like a shell, going through the motions without clarity on who they truly are. There's a loss of voice, a difficulty in expressing opinions, desires, and boundaries, because their identity has been shaped around pleasing or surviving. There's shame and self-doubt, a constant inner narrative of I'm not enough, or who am I without this role, this relationship, or this job. There are emotional symptoms that all too well are caused as well. There are symptoms of grief, mourning parts of ourselves that we've lost or maybe never ever developed. There's anxiety, a fear of making the wrong choices without a clear sense of self. I had so much anxiety myself about making the right choices, doing the right things, and never truly trusting myself. Depression, this heaviness, this low motivation, and helplessness when identity feels absent. Anger, frustration at having conformed for so long, being silenced or overlooked. And then there's external behaviors that we also experience. There's role dependence, defining ourselves only as a parent, partner, job title, or caretaker, numbing patterns, turning to addiction, overwork, or distraction to avoid the void inside. And sometimes they're chameleon tendencies, and that's the constantly shifting of our personality, our style, or our opinions to match who they're with. And often there's disconnection in relationships, struggling to feel seen or known because you don't know yourself. Again, how many of you see these costs and how much of this resonates with you? I know that all of these are been my own personal experiences all the way through childhood, adolescence, young adulthood, and honestly, even into my middle adulthood. Good news is there is a hopeful path forward. I've laid out here, oh, I see that, Shelley, that most of this resonates with you. I see here, I've laid out 4 key steps to break free from approval addictions and any addiction. And it is the beginning, the awareness, naming the pattern. It's self-compassion to heal the wounds. Gabor Mate talks about compassionate inquiry, and he has the individual look compassionately at the part of themselves that uses substances or behaviors by examining what has happened or what need wasn't being met. And then taking a compassionate level of understanding that if that person had a wounding, then it can make sense that they developed the use to manage that emotional experience. And I see that heart healing is truly a return to truth. Heart healing heals trauma and relational wounds that created the unconscious beliefs that guide the individual, allowing a return to truth, authenticity, by choosing self-love first. Heart healing creates a shift from merely coping with your challenges to fully transforming your inner world, unlocking new possibilities in love, success, health, and spiritual growth. It replaces subconscious patterns with empowering beliefs that align with your true self-worth and fosters self-worth and self-love. Recovering begins with awareness and self-compassion to heal the underlying wounds, embracing authenticity and self-love. This process involves recognizing patterns, nurturing oneself with kindness, and consciously choosing authenticity over approval. Heart healing has helped my clients come to understand the root wounds that led to behaviors that have been holding them back from the life they desire. One of peace, self-love, safety, and security. To share briefly a couple of stories, one of my clients, Anne, she's a 20-something that came to me right after being kicked out of college due to substance use. Her addiction to substances was a way to cover up the wounds of sexual trauma and feeling unseen throughout her life. She has obtained over 3 years now of sobriety from substances, and we have addressed the loss of identity that she felt, her people pleasing, and the need to be the person she thought others wanted her to be. And this led to her feeling a lack of self-trust, insecurity, and inability to release unhealthy relationships. And now Anne is completing her goal to attain a college degree. She knows her purpose and what she wants to do with her life. And she has a healthy relationship, one that she never could imagine. And she has processed sexual trauma and now owns her truth. And she's thriving as she continues on her healing journey. And then there's Jay, who is a young man who had an addiction to alcohol and Klonopin early on in his life. He also had an instilled people-pleasing belief and a need to overachieve. He was told as a child he had to perform to make others smile and laugh. He was a good child and not allowed to focus on anything that wasn't positive. Parents totally missed the signs. He was being bullied and sexually assaulted. He was prescribed a narcotic very early in his young life to help him with anxiety, and he learned quickly how substances hid his pain and made him feel confident, unbothered by what others thought about him. His addiction began impacting his relationship with his wife, and he entered recovery and has abstained from substances and is now working through identifying who he is, as he was conditioned to be the people pleaser and overachiever. His career became his identity, and it led to depression, severe anxiety, impacting his ability to function in life. HeartHealing gave him the place to identify the wounds of not being good enough and process his sexual abuse and begin developing self-love and recognizing his most authentic self. There's a path to wholeness, and there are 3 actions that we take to this wholeness path, and it's to notice when you are people-pleasing or performing for love, to nurture yourself, to speak to yourself with compassion, and to choose to align your choices with authenticity, not just approval. Transformation comes from conscious and unconscious healing. And I encourage you to reflect on where you seek approval over genuine love, and to imagine prioritizing yourself and your worthiness. I'm going to ask you to reflect on a couple of things. So I encourage you just to take a moment and jot down these questions so that you can take some quiet time later to reflect. The first question is, where in your life are you pleasing or performing for love instead of living in love? What would it be like if you put yourself first, love yourself, and embodied your worth? Living in love can be described in layers: how it feels within yourself, how it shows up in relationships, and how it extends to the world around you. So what does living in love look like? Living in love with yourself is acceptance of who you are, embracing your strengths, flaws, and history without judgment. It's gentle self-talk. It's shifting from inner criticism to kindness, encouragement, and compassion. It's trusting your intuition, knowing that we have an inner guidance and that inner guidance knows what we truly need. And we can listen to that instead of external pressure. And nurturing your needs, honoring rest and play and creativity and growth, allowing yourself to fill your own cup up and not expend that energy and everything you have on others. Living in love with others is authentic connection. It's having healthy boundaries. It's having empathy and understanding, not only for yourself, but for what others have been through. It's also forgiveness and grace, not just for yourself, but others as well. And recognizing that when we free ourselves up through forgiveness, we have more compassion for others. And it's also living in love in the world. And what that looks like is acts of kindness, small or large, done with genuine care, not for obligation. It is seeing the good, choosing to notice beauty and possibility and hope even in the hard times. The field of positive psychology has proven that finding positives leads to decrease in depression and anxiety. It's contribution, using your gifts to make a difference, whether in one life or in many lives. We each have a powerful purpose. And when we live in our purpose, we make powerful impacts on this world. Alignment with values, living in a way that feels true to your spirit, not society's shoulds. We have a lot of shoulds in our society, and we're pushed onto us. And coming into true alignment with your true and with what is true to yourself creates a profound sense of peace. So it's time. It's time for you to come back to you. It's time to love you and embody your most authentic self. I believe that we all have an inner knowing of what our most authentic self really looks like, believes in, and feels. And sometimes we've lost that connection to our true self because what we've experienced, witnessed, or what we've been told throughout our lives. We are all on a journey to learn how to love ourselves and others. And I personally believe that is our soul's journey. The first step is identifying and understanding that our core beliefs and uncovering the root of the wounds that form these beliefs. Some of the wounds we can quickly identify, and some we never knew consciously existed. I was truly unaware of how seemingly small events in my own life truly charted my life and led to some of my biggest challenges. Heart healing bypasses the analytical mind and allows people to release deeply ingrained emotional blocks and then begin rewiring our subconscious mind to believe more positive and loving thoughts about ourselves. You are resilient and you are worthy of taking the courageous step towards true healing. I would love to invite you to join me. I've created a workshop, a masterclass, Free to Be Me, breaking the cycle of people pleasing and overachieving. It's a 10-week course, including 10 90-minute Zooms sessions, a Facebook community page for support. Replays will be available if you can't join live. And if you join this week, I'm going to allow you to receive an added bonus of a 30-minute one-on-one session with me to set intentions for the work we do in the Free to Be Me and explore individual challenges. Are you ready? Are you ready to heal the wounds, to live authentically loved? You don't have to please or perform to be loved. You are already lovable, worthy, and enough. Healing the hidden wounds opens up our world to receiving the life of our dreams, and it allows us to experience and grow in ways we've never thought possible. Heart healing creates a shift from merely coping with your challenges to fully transforming your inner world, unlocking new possibilities in love, success, health, and spirituality. I've personally experienced this. My clients are experiencing this, and it is my life's mission to help as many individuals heal as I can. And I am committed to Natasha's mission of healing 10 million hearts. And I just want to say thank you so much for your presence today and for allowing me to share my experience, my strength, and my hope. It has been a wonderful opportunity to be the part of When Hearts Heal Online Summit. Thank you so much, Shelley, for your comments. And thank you to the School of Healing Mastery and to everyone who has been in this journey with me and with all the other authors. This has truly been a project of love and impact. And I'm so honored to have been a part of this beautiful book and this beautiful summit. This has been an amazing experience. And I truly hope that it has landed and resonated with many of you. And I hope for those of you who are watching on the replay that you'll reach out to me, whether it's just through my website or through the summit on Facebook. I appreciate all of you so much for being here. Oh, thank you, Terza, so much. Oh, Shelley, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of you in the comments that you're making. It truly has just made my day. And what's so wonderful is today is the 9/9 portal, and it truly is about things coming to this wonderful close. And this book is going to go on, and the impact is going to go on, and this experience is going to go on. But this labor of love is just truly has been an amazing experience. Thank you all again so much. And I appreciate you so much. And thank you for your time today. I look forward to hopefully connecting with you in the future. And I know the remaining days of this online summit are going to be so healing and so transformative. And I hope you all take the time to watch all of the presenters because they are truly phenomenal heart healing practitioners. I wish you a wonderful day, an even more amazing week, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Goodbye.